All right, we have more changes unfolding in the race for Pennsylvania Avenue. Changes that have Harris campaign surrogates working in the background, possibly in coordination with the campaign, we don't know, to release what they're calling the mother of all October surprises. This is apparently real. The story, at least, is real, meaning the effort that's going on behind the scenes to get this story picked up by a reputable media outlet. Whether the substance of the story, the details are true, we'll get to it. Then another bombshell October surprise story being shopped around on Kamala Harris, that multiple right-leaning journalists have now verified that they've received and have been pitched this story, that it exists. And apparently this one isn't all smoke. This one allegedly has receipts. But before we get started, thank you for liking and sharing these videos. It really helps out the channel. And consider subscribing so you don't miss these regular updates. So in presidential election politics, it's become tradition, or at least guaranteed almost, to have these last-minute bombshells that scramble the race. This has been going on since time immemorial. Last-minute revelations that wreak havoc, absolute havoc, and upend the race, dubbed an October surprise. Now, these stories, they could be coincidence, happenstance, or they can be deliberate, purposely orchestrated, and unveiled at the last minute to deliver the largest bang for their buck. You know this. You saw them do it to Trump in 2016 with the Access Hollywood tape, which we now know, by the way, wasn't just the campaign that kept that story under wraps, but was pitched and picked up by multiple mainstream outlets 6 weeks before releasing it. Actual media organizations purposely holding that story back, using the time to build a narrative in the press around Trump with women, how he treated women. So by the time they did release it, it would inflict the maximum damage possible. And again, this is nothing new. 150 years ago, Democrats did the same thing with President Garfield. You can Google it. Look it up. Waiting until October 20th, just 2 weeks before Election Day, to roll out what's now dubbed a Maury letter by historians, a 3-sentence letter, which they claim was written by President Garfield himself, that showed he was in favor of buying Chinese immigrants for cheap labor, claiming xenophobia in giant letters on the paper, getting it published in the New York Truth. Even back then they were doing this. It sounds awfully similar, doesn't it, to what they're doing today? According to pollster Mark Halperin, Dems surrogates are trying to shop a story to the media, which, if true, would end Trump's campaign. For the record, it's probably not true. Watch.
And the point I was making is there's all sorts of things being floated out there. Maybe Jeffrey Goldberg just happened to finish the story 2 weeks before the election. I'm sure Sean will have a point of view about that. I know of one story that's been pitched to a major newspaper and to me, and for all I know, to many others, that I don't believe is true. But if it's true, as I said yesterday, it would end Donald Trump's campaign. Just as if the accusations now thoroughly debunked and attributed by American intelligence to Russia about Tim Walz, if those were true, it would end his campaign. What we're seeing in the final days, is a point I was making, is actors who want a certain outcome are on social media and in pitches to reporters, and in the case of The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg writing himself, are trying to affect the end of the race because they're so desperate to try to pull a Comey. I'm not pursuing the story. I don't think it's true. People in Mar-a-Lago, calm down. All I'm saying is there are people out there pitching stuff. And if it were true, it would end his campaign. But if someone pitched me a story that said Trump is a Martian, that might not end his campaign. People might think that's cool. You get my point. There's stuff like that.
So as of Monday, just a few days ago, they were shopping this story around, looking for a legit outlet to pick it up. From what we know, the Wall Street Journal, the Times, CNN, and the Washington Post all were approached with this story. They were pitched on the story, and they've all turned it down. We've seen this exact scenario play out 8 years ago with the Steele dossier, the Russian Steele dossier about Trump. They pitched it to all the big outlets first. After being turned down, they settled on who? Purposely, they do that purposely. It allows legacy media to maintain journalistic credibility, yet use the Daily Beast story as a hook to talk about it anyways, to talk about the substance of it on their airwaves. Well, it looks like for this new bombshell, they won't be using the Daily Beast this time, Apparently, they're going to The Intercept, who is doing their own legwork on the story now. They apparently picked it up or are trying to. So we'll see what happens with that. Just know if CNN and the New York Times and the Washington Post all turned it down, there's a reason. They would love nothing else than to publish a scoop like that. This is what desperation looks like. They are desperate. What we're seeing in these final days are hyper-partisan surrogates trying to affect the outcome of the race. This reminds me of the Trump N-word tape. Remember that? While filming The Apprentice, he allegedly referred to a black person using the slur. They've hyped that story for years, yet the tapes never surfaced. Donald Trump, look, he's hands down the most investigated, thoroughly vetted human being on the planet. If something like that did exist, something credible, you know it would have come out by now. But don't assume because it's not credible that corporate media won't run with it anyways. Watch this.
The Atlantic is out today with a new article quoting more of the racist, reprehensible things Donald Trump says behind closed doors, including comments about a murdered Army private. I remember this story. In 2020, Private Vanessa Guillen, the daughter of Mexican immigrants, was killed by another soldier at Fort Hood in Texas. And at the time, then President Donald Trump publicly offered to pay for her funeral. But when the bill came, according to this report, Trump was furious, telling his chief of staff, Mark Meadows, quote, "It doesn't cost $60,000 to bury an effing Mexican." He turned to Meadows and issued an order, don't pay it.
The Atlantic, a pure propaganda outlet for the Dem Party, probably the worst publication out there, published that story yesterday, a complete hit piece. Well, it took all but a few hours for that story to be aggressively denounced by the victim's own family. The sister of the slain soldier came out and slammed the Atlantic, saying, "I don't appreciate how you're exploiting my sister's death for politics, hurtful and disrespectful to the important changes she made for service members. President Trump did nothing but show respect to my family and Vanessa. In fact, I voted for President Trump today," she added. The story was, by the way, also denied by people who were actually present in those meetings where the comments were allegedly made. All this coming out conveniently 14 days before the election. Published by far-left outlet The Atlantic, the same publication whose billionaire owner was caught on video with none other than Kamala Harris herself, admitting the entire purpose, the goal of The Atlantic, was to create and push narratives to benefit the Dem Party. Watch.
And so it was obvious that if we could be part of the creation of cultural narrative, that would enhance and amplify all the work that we're doing.
Which is Hillary Clinton talked about today, is telling the story, getting the content out there.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sure we can trust them to give us the facts. This is the kind of media environment we're in, folks. They are desperate. Trump has all the momentum, and they're scared then to make things even crazier. Unlike this Trump bombshell, there's now a Kamala bombshell, October surprise, that's apparently being shopped around as well, with former New York Congressman George Santos releasing this video on X yesterday, telling his followers to get ready because this will end the Kamala campaign. Watch.
Oh, hey guys, gotta tell you something. It's so crazy. I just got off the phone with a source, and they're telling me that tomorrow the Kamala Harris ship sinks. You're gonna see all the rats jumping off. The story that's gonna break tomorrow is so damning and so bad that Democrats are going to distance themselves from her like something you've never seen before. And essentially, you might even see some asking for people to vote for Trump. This is wild.
Remember the times when October surprises were boring? In 2000, the October surprise was George Bush's DUI, and that shocked the nation. Only 10 days left until Election Day. Things are going to heat up, folks. They're going to get crazy. In private, Dems are freaking out, seeing public polling every day showing Trump continuing to gain traction. Look at these numbers from today. These are all of today's polls. From Thursday, October 24th, national polls showing Trump leading. The Wall Street Journal's national poll is Trump up by 3. CNBC's national poll, Trump's up by 2. Realize what this means. National polling always has the Democrat up for a reason. There's a reason for that. National polling tracks with the popular vote. As wrong as the polls were in 2016 and 2020, they were pretty accurate when compared to the popular vote numbers. Seeing Trump leading nationally is incredible, and in the swing states, it's even worse. Pennsylvania, Trump leading in this Franklin and Marshall poll. Another Pennsylvania poll by Emerson has Trump up by 1. Wisconsin, Trump's leading by 1. North Carolina, he's leading by 2 in both the Emerson and the Marist polls. Arizona, he's leading. Georgia, he's leading. And the betting market still have him leading by 25 points. We went over this in more detail last video, how Wall Street is now all in on a Trump victory. Even the swing state contests have Trump up by huge spreads. Look at the numbers for Pennsylvania. Trump winning by 13 points. Pennsylvania is a must-win state for the vice president, a must-win. It's why they sent her to Philadelphia last night for that CNN town hall, hoping to sway undecided voters. Take a look for yourself at what happened.
Is a border wall stupid?
Well, let's talk about Donald Trump and that border wall. So remember, Donald Trump said Mexico would pay for it? Come on, they didn't. How much of that wall did he build? I think the last number I saw is about 2%. And then when it came time for him to do a photo op, you know where he did it? In the part of the wall that President Obama built.
But you're agreeing to a bill
on.
that would earmark $650 million to continue building that wall.
I pledge that I am going to bring forward that bipartisan bill to further strengthen and secure our border. Yes, I am. And I'm going to work across the aisle to pass a comprehensive bill that deals with a broken immigration system. I think Jackson's question, part of it was to acknowledge that America has always had migration, but there needs to be a legal process for it. People have to earn it. And that's the point that I think is the most important point that can be made, which is we need a president who is grounded in common sense and practical outcomes. Like, let's just fix this thing. Let's just fix it. Why is there any ideological perspective on it? Let's just fix the problem.
To fix the problem, you're doing this compromise bill. It does call for $650 million that was earmarked under Trump to actually still go to build the wall.
I am not afraid of good ideas where they occur.
So you don't think it's stupid anymore?
I think what he did and how he did it did not make much sense because he actually didn't do much of anything. I just talked about that wall, right? We just talked about it. He didn't actually do much of anything.
But you do want to build some wall.
I want to strengthen our border.
And you wonder why they're resorting to these types of last-minute shenanigans. All right, that wraps up this episode. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time.